Believe it or not, John is gonna make $1 in interest. But you heard.
Now, before we dive in, just a quick reminder. This video is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and should not be considered financial advice. Our full disclaimer is shown here and on our website. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of us reacting to finance TikToks. So, today is going to be a little different in the sense of all the videos we're going to present today is going to be more a recipe for how do you actually start your journey, which is, starting to invest, starting to save, and then finally being able to buy your home. So a lot of the components of the videos today will each be a piece that you're going to need to have the keys to your success. So hopefully you enjoy these videos, and yeah, let's dive right into some videos right away. So this very first video is from a creator called Chris Cobb_chosen. And he's going to talk to us about high yield savings accounts.
Savings works in 60 seconds. So here we have John, and John puts his money in a regular bank account like Chase, and they're paying 0.01%. And this is how it looks. If he saves $100, Chase is only gonna pay him 1 cent. But if he saves $1,000, now they're gonna pay him 10 cents. And if he saves $10,000, believe it or not, John is gonna make $1 in interest. But you've heard of something called a high yield savings where they pay close to 4%. So in this same account, where if he saved $100, now he's gonna get $4 instead of 1 cent. But if he saved $1,000, it's the difference between making $40 versus 10 cents. And this is where it gets really great. If he saves $10,000, instead of making $1, John is now making $400. And that's for doing absolutely nothing, just switching where he saves his money. So high yield savings is not gonna necessarily make you rich, but it's gonna make you more money than it would a traditional checking account. And most banks aren't going to take this because it costs them money. So if you want to list the top high yield savings in 2025, comment savings below, and I got you.
So let's actually talk through this. So I am someone who actually uses the more traditional banks. This is like the Chases, the Citibanks, the Capital Ones, all of that. That's my, where I put most of my money. But as I started to research more the high yield savings account and kind of the benefits of doing that versus the traditional, brick and mortar banks, I started to realize that I'm missing out on a lot of savings opportunities. And I'm someone who genuinely enjoys to save money. So sometimes I'll have a few grand here and there just saved up, for a rainy day, which is, we call that the emergency fund. And it's just sitting there. It's just sitting there for the opportunity either to potentially become the next investment in my portfolio, or just sitting there just in case, God forbid, I lose my job. Usually the emergency fund in most cases should just be used for emergency, of course, but sometimes I will take the risk of, using it to buy assets as well, especially when a great opportunity comes around. Now, putting money into some of these accounts, just like he mentioned, like Chase and things like that, you're going to get usually 1 cent off every $100 that you save, which is nothing. That's absolutely nothing. While these banks are going out there and lending your money nowadays up to 7%. So imagine that. They're paying you 0.01% while they're going out there and milking your money by lending it out at almost 7%. That is, to me, I think that's just crazy. So essentially the borrowing cost for your money specifically is almost nil. It's almost nothing. Now, you could try to maximize it a little where you could potentially go into like certificates of deposits like CDs and things like that. But what does that do for your money? It actually locks your money away. So essentially you can't really use that money for this, set time period. Sometimes, if you do a certificate deposit in the bank, they'll take your money and they'll freeze it for usually a period of time. Sometimes 2 months, 4 months, whatever the time period you and the bank negotiate. But essentially, in order to get a higher rate, they have to guarantee that you will not take this money out. Now, if we turn that over now to the high yield savings account, that actually doesn't have that limitation. So it has the benefits of a CD, certificate of deposit, while also giving you the rates that a certificate of deposit, usually gives. The other aspect that we have to think about for both sides is that a brick and mortar bank has a lot more expenses. So they'll have physical tellers, they'll have branches, they'll have a lot more things. But I don't think that justifies them paying you more, close to 4% less in interest just because of these kinds of expenses. While an online savings account usually will not have any of these features, such as like brick and mortar. You can actually go to the branch, talk to tellers, and sometimes you might have like some complex situations where you have like, hey, maybe a certified check that you needed to get, or all these kinds of items that come up once in a while but not all the time. So this is my honest advice for this kind of situation. I would say you should at least have one brick and mortar account while having most of your money nowadays in a high yield savings account. Nowadays, with inflation creeping up so much, getting 0.01% of your money is not going to help you fight inflation at all. It's actually going to erode your money, make your money worth less, and make it more difficult for you to actually afford the things that you want to in the future. So, what do you use the physical branch for? The physical branch is more for the complex issues, such as like if you have a certified check you need to get. You potentially need to, and certified checks, by the way, are used for multiple things. Whether you're buying a car or buying a house, you need that, that certified check to actually, get to the closing. So having a physical branch for that is totally fine, because what you can do is you got to transfer funds from your high yield savings account to the physical branch and then do all your business as usual. Except while, you have all your money in your high yield savings account, you're making so much more interest. You're really making your money work for you in the meantime while you work on other items and investments. So hopefully this helps, and let's roll on to the next video. So this next video is from Wes the Advisor, and he's going to talk to you about, hey, if you would have invested X amount in the S&P 500 back when COVID, or around 2020, what that would have actually been worth right now in just a short 5 years.
25,025 G's in the S&P 500 at its low on March 23rd, 2020. What? 2020. You'll be sitting on March 23rd, 2020, marked a historic turning point in the markets. Major indexes like the S&P 500, Dow Jones, NASDAQ, they plunged more than 30% from their highs, triggering a level market panic we hadn't seen in over a decade because everybody was going crazy. Now think about this. Most people ran from the markets. But look, a small group of investors, you know what they did? They was waiting for a moment just like this. And they was waiting for an event. It's called the Black Swan event. This term made very popular by author and investor Nassim Taleb in his book, The Black Swan. These are very, very rare, unpredictable events that can cause serious damage if you're unprepared. But for those with the right strategy, they can also unlock massive opportunities. Oh my goodness, if you invested. Investors who had, one, the long-term strategy, diversified portfolios, cash set aside for moments just like this, were able to pounce on high-quality stocks at bargain prices. Here's a perfect example. If you had 25,025 G's in the S&P 500 at its low on March 23rd, 2020, 2020, you'd be sitting on nearly $63,000 today. That's 150% return, people. That's 20% a year over the last 5 years. Today, you would have made $38,000 in profit if you stayed calm and you were strategic. It's funny how everybody runs to the store when there's a sale, but everybody runs from stocks when it's on sale. That's crazy, bro. That mindset will keep you financially behind. However, if you're ready to change your perspective on how investing works, DM your boy, holla at me, so you don't miss another opportunity like that. 150% over the last 5 years? Come on, bro. Come on, man. Holla at your boy. Let's be smart about investing. God bless.
So let's actually talk through this. So just to give you some context, the S&P 500 usually on average makes 10 to 15%, sometimes even 18% a year. This was a very special event. Overall, this was COVID, when COVID occurred. And a lot of people, just like he mentioned, were running for the hills. They were like, oh my gosh, the market's going to crash. Everything's, going crazy. Everyone's being locked in their homes. All industries are going to crash. Now, this is the opportune time for everyone out there. And it wasn't even just stocks at that time. Even houses were, I'm not saying that they were cheap, but the interest rates were so low because of the economic uncertainty that was out there that, the Fed was just like, hey, just to keep the, everything kind of, pushing along, let's make interest rates effectively zero. So essentially the banks could borrow at pretty much nothing. They could just take the money whenever they wanted at 0% interest. Now, what did that mean for people who actually decided to take the risk during these uncertain times? So, for example, in this case, you could have went two routes. The first route would have been, hey, I'm going to go into the stock market when things are so cheap and everyone's actually pulling out the market instead of, pumping money into the market and make a killing. I mean, come on, where are you going to be making in 5 years? Your money jumped from like 25K to now 63K. That's unheard of. That's just simply unheard of. And you want to hear something even crazier? And it's probably, I'm not sure if it's as crazy as that S&P 500, but there are people who bought homes, back when interest rates were like maybe like 2%, 2.5%, 3%. People were buying houses for that, for that price because, as I said, banks were borrowing money at 0% from the Fed, so they could really give mortgage rates at whatever rate they wanted, 2-3%. Who cares? We're borrowing at 0. So if you were able to lock in a 2 or 3% mortgage at that time, it was the best of both worlds, because not only were homes not too crazy price, while the pandemic was still fresh, but you also had the advantage of actually getting a lower mortgage rate. Now, there were people out there who were buying homes for like maybe 400 grand, 500 grand, but this was at a 2 and 3% interest rate. Nowadays, we are at 7, sometimes 7, and close to 8, earlier last year, 8% interest, and we're paying more than double for the homes. That's insane to me. Like a home that you bought for like 400K, you could sell it for 800K, 900K in a matter of 5 years. So on top of you having a low mortgage payment, and your house wasn't, you didn't purchase it for that much, now you have higher interest and the home is worth more. So now, back then when you lost the opportunity to do what you wanted to do, which is sadly buy a home, now, even now, if people are struggling to find a home just because of the high interest rates. But let's reverse that scenario. If you actually wait until the market actually goes down to like the lower interest rate, which is what happened back during COVID, you're not going to have the blend you had before, where it's not that the market's not uncertain anymore. The market's actually going to be really great on the first thing we're going to notice, and then the interest rates are going to be low. So in some cases, you won't have that unicorn of the combination that we had during COVID. So actually the houses are going to go is gonna increase like crazy. So a home that's running for like 900 grand right now will probably be like 1.2, 1.3 million once they lower their interest rates back to like 2 or 3% or even 4%. So sadly, the lesson here learned is when there are opportune times in history, if you don't take advantage of it, you sadly will regret it a little later, because those that took advantage of it only got richer and had the ability to do it, of course, because they had the funds. But these are the types of things we need to learn, that even if you have a small amount that you're willing to risk it for the biscuit. So let's move on to the next video. This next video is from I Am Andrew Russell, and he's actually going to talk to you guys about paying off your mortgage a little bit sooner than expected.
Andrew, I have to know, what would happen if I paid $1 extra a day to my mortgage payment?
Could it ever make sense to pay an extra $1 a day? Let's look at the numbers. All right, so we have a $400,000 mortgage, for our example, right, at 6.5% on a 30-year fix. If you do an extra $1 a day, that's $365 per the year, right? So 30 years, it's a little over 10 grand in payments. So if you cannot get that one extra Starbucks latte via Uber Eats, you can do this. Now, what does it do for you? You actually save $22,500 in payments, and you save a year. That's right, 1 year off your mortgage just for giving up that one extra coffee.
So let's actually talk through this briefly. So what he's saying is correct. Every time you pay an additional amount towards your principal, that's actually going to shave off that amount, of interest that you're actually going to be saving. So for every dollar that you take off, you're actually going to pay 6.5 cents every single year less. So essentially, if you have the ability to do that, that is I'm not gonna lie, that's gonna save you so much time on your mortgage. Instead of paying off your mortgage in 30 years, even if you're able to pay it off even 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years less, this is gonna save you so much interest in the long run. And an easy example is if you buy a house for like $1 million and you actually pay it off over the 30 years, you're actually gonna get charged close to $2 or $3 million of interest, especially nowadays with how high interests are. So overall, paying off your mortgage early is great, and yearly, you're going to receive a guaranteed rate of return. Think about it. Every time you pay off your mortgage, you're going to be guaranteed effectively the interest that you're saving every single year. That's a rate of return right there, people. So overall, paying off your mortgage is something I do, and something I wholeheartedly want you guys to do as well. Pay off your mortgage and live, financially free from your mortgage. Hello everyone, my name is Anthony and I'm the host of the Log Sanctuary. I hope you've been enjoying our content so far, and if you have, please feel free to like and subscribe. Also, we have our website up here, and we also have some socials down here. And as always, leave your comments down below. So this next creator is Money Coach Vince, and he's actually going to talk to us about how do you actually get started in making your life work. What do you need to do to actually move forward from the rut that you're in and really start to capitalize on your future.
Financial literacy and stability for beginners. If you've been trying to get your money together but don't know where to start, this is a simple 3-step system that I use to go from confused and broke to confident and in control. Number 1 is clarity. I'm gonna break this down as simple as possible. You cannot manage what you can't see. Like if it's not something that you can see in here, it's not something that's gonna become a reality out there. So you have to get clear on everything financial. For this, I suggest writing it down. Your income, your bills, your spending habits. This right here is typically the hardest place for people to begin, but it's the truth that everybody needs to see because the truth is gonna set you free. Number 2, you gotta
So let's briefly talk about this. So I agree with him where if you don't know what money is coming in versus what's going out, you're never going to truly understand where you have unnecessary spending. In a lot of cases, the very common trope is, hey, like I went out and bought Starbucks for $5 or $10 instead of making coffee at home. That's just one very simple example where you, instead of spending sometimes $150 to $200 a month on Starbucks, you could probably be spending maybe $20 or $30 a month just making coffee at home. These are the little types of things that give, when you have clarity in your budget, that allow you to actually save money and actually start to build your nest egg, start to build your future.
Prioritize. Now that you have clarity about your finances, what's coming in and what's going out, now you need to get clear about where you're going. This is why you got to have set goals, clear, concrete goals to accomplish and to achieve, and prioritize what matters most. For me, I teach monthly expenses in your checking, $2,000 immediate fund in your regular savings, at least $10,000 in a high yield savings account for your emergency fund, at least $100 a month being invested towards the future, and you focus on eliminating the debt. Hey, the only way this works is if you attack one goal at a time. Prioritize one goal, hit that goal, then move on to the next. That's how you create momentum financially and how you become financially free a lot quicker. And step 3 is automate.
So let's talk about this one next. So basically what he's saying here is to basically prioritize what it is you want to do. So a lot of cases, let's say you're in debt or you have a savings goal that you want to achieve. Maybe you want to buy a house. All of these are goals that you need to focus on. So essentially, it doesn't mean that you can't tackle each of the goals at the same time, but think about how much of each of the goal you want to achieve in a set period of time. So essentially, let's say I want to save for a house, let's say I want to save $50,000 for a house. There's no way you might be able to save $50,000 for a house, plus pay off $20,000 of debt, plus invest $30,000 into the S&P 500, unless you have, of course, the money reserves to do that, which most of us sadly don't. So that's why you need to really prioritize what is it that you really want to achieve. And in most cases, what I recommend is paying off your debts as much as possible, then, having your emergency fund, and then thinking about like, hey, let's start investing, let's start building our wealth. Because the first thing you need to do is to secure your future, which is to build a nest egg. You need to pay off your debts as quickly as possible so you're more financially free. And finally, start your investment journey, of course. And just really, you can even start with $100, just like you mentioned, or even start building like small pockets of money so that you want to use for a down payment for a home. So let's move on. Let's see what else he has to say on this one.
Then adjust. Now that we have clarity and the goals that we need to prioritize, now it's time to set up the systems and automations to get there. For a lot of people, this is another tough spot just because they're not used to it, but in reality, you are used to it. Setting up a $200, $300, $400, $500 automation to go towards saving is pretty much what most people do every month anyway. They buy things that they cannot afford that don't fit in the budget, but some way, somehow, it always ends up working out. It's the same thing. So set it up based on the plan, even though you don't think this is going to work, and then make the adjustments later. You'll be surprised at exactly how much you'll be able to automate your system. Even if it's not the amount that you initially planned, whatever you adjust to is more than what you was doing before. I can make you one of these 3-step plans to walk you through all this with clarity. Hey, no BS, no fluff, no complicated formula. Just head to my website, imyourmoneycoach.com, or comment the word stability and I'll get it to you.
So this is the final piece. Invest in yourself. So essentially, when you have your monthly budget, one piece of it should be saving a portion of your money. Usually 20% is best, at least. I personally do 30 or 40% just because, as I said, I'm a savings fanatic. So I would say if you have the ability to do this, make sure to treat your savings as if it's a payment to yourself and something that you owe to yourself to build, to invest, to really achieve what you want in life. Because if you don't make what you want in life, achievable, then no one else will. It's a sad reality, but you need to make the initiative to really make it your own. So let's move on to the next creator now. This next creator is from Austin Hankwitz, and he's going to talk to us about house hacking. So once you have a house, how do you make your house work for you?
And you don't own any real estate. It's time to try house hacking using the 5% down Fannie Mae mortgage. Let me explain to you with a real example in Knoxville, Tennessee. This is a real example in Knoxville, Tennessee. Here's the Zillow listing. You're more than welcome to steal it. So in case you're wondering, the Fannie Mae 5% mortgage allows you to borrow up to $1.4 million to buy up to 4 units, so up to a quadplex. This specific listing tells us they cash flow $40,000 a year on about $46,800 in annual rent, or $1,000 per unit per month. But we're gonna live in one of these units because you are house hacking, right? So you're only gonna bring in $3,000 from the other 3 units. So let's walk through the example. Your down payment is gonna be $32,500, or 5% of $650,000. Your monthly mortgage payment is gonna be about $4,200, including taxes, insurance, PMI, things of that nature, which means if you're collecting $3,000, you gotta make up the difference of $1,200 per month, so that's what you're gonna pay to live in this quadplex. According to the tax records, it's appreciated by about 50% over the last 10 years, so if we fast forward to 2035, this property is potentially worth $975,000 or more, and because other people have been paying off your mortgage, you only owe about $530,000. So when you take what it could be worth and you subtract what you still owe on it, you have about $445,000 of equity before fees. Again, this is a real example in Knoxville, Tennessee, as long as you're willing to be a landlord and pay about $1,200 a month in rent. If you want more ideas, comment real estate and I'll send you different ways that I'm also investing in real estate.
So let's actually talk through this house hacking. What is it? So house hacking, by definition, is basically you are living in your home and you're renting portions of it to other people. This could be either rooms or whole levels. So in this case, he had a 4-family home, so he rented 3 of those units to other people. In some cases, you have, for example, maybe 2 or 3 units, and you might even rent out, a whole level, just like you mentioned here. Or house hacking can also be you rent out a room within the unit you're living in. this is another opportunity for you to have space. Maybe you have too much space in your unit and you're like, hey, maybe I could rent out this room for an extra, kickback. That's very common to do that, especially if if that room is just being used for storage, then make it work for you. Make it, make the money, get some money with that unused space. Now, I did want to talk one item that kind of, called out to me, which was the appreciation in value. I agree with him where, on top of, you paying your rent, which is the portion that you might owe after all of your house hacking, funds have been used up. But be very, very careful of what he said. Even though he said in the past 10 years, homes did appreciate, 50%, that is not always the case. There are times when it's not, there's times that markets crash. It's not like that the whole housing market crash, but maybe portions of a county crashes. And you're going to have times where, your home isn't worth anything. It's very going to be cut in half. I'm not trying to scare everyone out there, but, there are, housing is the type of thing where, markets shift. Just like everything. Every single city here in the market is going to shift. People are going to move out of cities. They're going to move into other cities. And that's really going to pump it up. The other aspect that we need to think about is in the last 10 years, what happened? We had COVID. So COVID was a very unique event where housing prices skyrocketed. Like, it's crazy. Everyone was looking for a home at that time, and that made inventory deplete to unheard of levels and made it so homes are crazy price right now. I'm not saying that in the next 10 years your home can't go up to 50%. What I'm saying is that we need to factor in unusual circumstances when you make your forecast of 50%, such as COVID in this case. So I do want to, just make you wary that not everything that has happened before will happen again. I know people say history repeats itself, but I'm not sure if another COVID is going to hit in the next 10 years, and God forbid it doesn't. So with that said, I would say this has been, our reaction to TikToks, episode 16. I hope everyone out there has a blessed day, and adios, everyone. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job, and I'm wishing everyone out there all the best. All right, until next time, adios.